Hello and welcome to Keighley Pride Podcasts. This is a new series developed and created by the Keighley Pride Community Group, talking about all things queer in Keighley and our community.
Hello, my name is Doll's Nest. If you watched the previous podcast, then you will already know. And I've been commissioned by Keighley Pride to speak about what it is being queer in Keighley and surrounding areas. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest. She is one of my sisters from Bradford. We've worked together for quite some time now. Not only that, she is a very, very, very good friend of mine.
Hello, my darlings. My name is Dragalicious. I've been a drag queen for nearly 17 years now.
Far
too long, love. Should have had me in some firing squad a long time back. But yeah, a long number of years. I've been working with the Doll's Nest for a good few years as well. I've seen the little demon grow. Sadly, when I threw water on her, she didn't melt. Yeah, I grew up originally in Huddersfield, and that's where I started my drag career.
Yeah, and you've had quite a coloured career as well. You've been all over the place. You've done some amazing things, some things that we're not going to mention. And and you've also been doing Pride for quite some time as well, which is sort of the name of the game with these podcasts. So
Right.
Do you want to just talk a little bit about your first ever Pride and how you started compared to where you are now?
Oh, wow, that's a question. My first ever Pride would have been one of the Huddersfield Pink, it used to be called the Pink Picnic, and it was Huddersfield Pride. That would have been one of my first ever Prides that I performed at, and one of the first ever Prides that I went to as well. Pride back, God, I sound so old, back in the day, back then, was very different to what Pride is now. Like, Pride now definitely has almost more of a commercialised vibe to it. It's Pride now, whereas Pride used to be literally all the queer community together, celebrating each other. There was always that slight bit of hedonism. That's always been a thing with Pride. But just enjoying and appreciating. Whereas now, to be fair, I think a lot of Pride is about, let's see how much money we can make off these bitches.
Which is sort of what the aim of this podcast is. Dragalicious knows this, and I said it in the last podcast so much. To grow with our future, we've got to give nod to the past. We can't grow forward as a society or as a community without understanding and having the knowledge of the reason we have the rights today. We've got to understand the fight that our ancestors had to, well, not ancestors, should I say predecessors, because Jesus Christ, we're not that bloody old.
I'm knocking on.
Yeah, our predecessors, the fight that they had, the struggles. And this is why I thought you would have been a good fit for this one, because I do believe, again, that we've sort of got a bit more of a commercialised Pride. It's not about the celebration of being ourselves. It's about who can party for the longest. This is something that I liked about Keighley Pride last year, was that it wasn't about drinking. I can imagine it was so much how it used to be back in the day. We had a very family-friendly event, community values.
Yeah, I've heard some great things about it. I was gutted because up until the day itself, I was going to come along and then I couldn't. I was so gutted because I've heard some really good things. Marigold was there as well, wasn't she?
Yes, yeah. I was the same with you. I wasn't actually able to make the first one. Our Alison, for the viewers who don't know, Alison is my gorgeous mother.
We love Alison.
We're all Alison fan accounts. Our Alison went along and she said it was an absolute cracking day. And we were working together that night, actually. We weren't able to go. Just to touch back on about how Pride used to be. Can you go in a bit more depth of what Pride used to be like?
Right, I might go on a bit of a tangent, but I do have a point, I promise. When I grew up and came out as gay I think I was 14 when I came out as gay. And I'm from a small village in Huddersfield called Honley. And genuinely, the amount of disdain and hatred that was afforded to anyone within the queer community from that smaller village, it was hideous. Literally, we used to get spat at, things thrown at us in the street. This was only about 16 years ago. This wasn't like in the 60s. It was horrific. And so the notion of there being a place where queer people could go and be safe and feel accepted and just be themselves was unfathomable to us. And that's why on my first, especially I can only speak from my personal experience, my first Pride, it was such a revelation to me. It was in a humongous field. We had a farmer that rented it out, and it used to happen every year. It was called the Pink Picnic in Huddersfield. And literally, we used to have massive stages erected. There used to be loads of different stalls. There used to be vehicles, floats, parades. It was the most beautiful atmosphere. It was almost kind of like it had a free love hippie feel. And by that, I don't mean that everyone used to go around fiddling with each other. I just mean that kind of, well, that could have happened later on. But it was just such a beautiful free space. It was genuinely like idealistic. It was crazy. And looking back on that being my first experiences of Pride to what Pride is now, like you said, who can drink the most, who can party the hardest, who can look the most fish, and that isn't to me, because in my head ingrained, Pride should be what my first Pride was. Because that was a feeling of pride, a feeling of celebrating who you are. And even though I don't deny that feeling definitely does still exist in the Pride community, I think it's been diluted massively.
It was only 16 years ago that you was getting spat on in the streets.
Yeah.
And I think this is something that we need to remember, that it wasn't a long time ago. It wasn't back in the day, in quotation marks, as people say. It was literally only going back a decade. And
yeah, absolutely.
We still have these problems today. We still walk down the street and people still call us names. I mean, me and Dragalicious work with another queen of ours called King, and we used to work together as well. Me and King was walking to one of our shifts together, and we literally got egged in full drag in the middle of a street. And this was only 2 years ago. So these things still happen. It is disgusting. And what I think this is why we need to just highlight that even though we've been fighting for so long, the fight is still not over.
And I think as well, like, this is a different thing. When a lot of people talk about throwing shade and that, and drag queens are shady, part of the reason drag queens do throw shade in that was as a protection mechanism.
Yes.
When you had abusive or vile customers in your venue or that approached you on the street, it was your method of attack. You had to have that wittiness, that boom, to like try and push it back a bit so you could either make your escape or diffuse the situation. Whereas now, being shady is like, oh yes, be a bitch. That isn't where it originally came from.
And I think that's something that we all need to remember as well, is that our culture has so much meaning behind it. But now, because of everyday things of drag going mainstream and the accessibility of drag with social media and different events, is that not only is Pride getting diluted, as you said, but our culture is, and it's losing its meaning. I mean, all of our terms that we have, like passable, fish, shade, girl, and all of these different words, they came from a culture of ballroom, which for people who don't know is queer space that was created mainly by Black and Latino people in America. They would create little ballrooms, which is what we call voguing. And this is another term that has been lost over time. Voguing was our type of dance.
Done that.
Absolutely. A voguing was a gay thing, and that was sort of like one of our tropes. It was our tribal dance, so to say. And that is another thing that's lost its power. And that came from America, as did Pride, where it got brought over here. It doesn't matter which part of the world you're from. So being queer is family values no matter where you go. And I think what's good about this platform that we're doing here at Keighley Pride, I know we spoke to Rachel, but she doesn't speak for our community. She just amplifies the voice. And I think what this is doing is speaking to people in our community and bringing back the voices that we've lost so that we can power each other on to do more good.
I love that. I love the term. I've never heard it described like that before. Voguing as being the queer tribal dance. I absolutely adore that. And that's fantastic.
But this is it. What we have as a culture is we sort of like to tear other people down to make ourselves better. So when, for example, colonization was happening, we called people of colour savages because they had a different way of life. And, you know, it's that sort of idea, that mentality that we will diminish other people's rights.
Yeah, it's like difference isn't celebrated, it's vilified. As a queer community, the whole thing we're meant to do is promote diversity, promote being yourself. But I think, sadly, a majority of it, well, yeah, I will say majority, actually. A majority of people I know, let's put it that way, in the queer community, need to start practicing what they preach, because a lot of people
Absolutely.
like, yes, be yourself, be different. Oh, she looks fat in that dress. Oh, look at that makeup. No, darling, no.
Absolutely. And it's funny you should say this, because I even said in the last podcast that although our community is brilliant and we're well knitted together, and a lot of problems come from outside our community, i.e. the hatred of trans people, that does not come from our own community. However, we do have a small part of our community where they're actually just as problematic in and themselves, and we need to call the problem in-house as well as call the problem out of the house. All that we can say to sort of combat this is just carry on living your authentic life. Drag is political, and me and Dragalicious, we've gotten into one too many arguments with other people about how they put other people down. She's the viper, I'm the scorpion. The best way to combat this is just do exactly what you want and be unapologetic, because being political is not just about what you type on Facebook, it's about how you act in person, and it's about what you say to the people who don't share the opinions that you do.
Exactly.
We've got a group called the Triple Ds. Now, I'm Doll's Desk, we've got Dragalicious, and one of our sisters, King, as I mentioned, her government name also begins with a D. So we thought it was just kind of a bit of a funny, it was a playoff. And we always say, do we not?
It's love and life.
Love and life, and there's also something different for everybody. The
Yeah.
Dragalicious is this larger-than-life queen with the voice of an angel. King is a spiteful goth queen, but Jesus Christ, can she entertain a crowd with her silliness. And I'm the people's princess, and I'll be donning a princess dress anywhere you go. So there's something different for everybody, and that's what it's celebrating.
Yeah, in theory, you think about it, the three of us shouldn't work together. It shouldn't work on paper, but it just does. But that's what I think is great about us as an act, and acting, a lot of acts in general, not just us, in that if you do cater to lots of different tastes, sometimes an audience might be like, oh, I want to go and see a comedy queen, oh, I want to go and see a vocal queen, oh, I want to go and see a dancing queen. If you can try and put as many facets of that into your act as possible, then that's all gravy.
But it's funny you should say, I want to see a comedy queen, I want to see a voguing queen, because I'm the dancer of the group, Dragalicious is the singer, and King is the funny gal. When we do our shows, we'll come on, we'll do a group number, we'll sing, then Dragalicious will do another number. King will come on stage, do something silly, he'll do a bit of David Bowie, dressed as the Goblin King, and then I'll come on stage and do a burlesque number. And we entertain the crowds, we give something for everybody, because as well, about our community, we have this sort of expectation that everybody's the same and that we all watch Drag Race and we all click our fingers and throw up our fans and scream, "Yas, Queen to the gods." However, that's not true. We all have different personalities, we all have different tastes, just as we do in any community.
And especially with gay bars now, not just being frequented by gay people, gay bars now, the majority of custom comes from straight people.
Yes.
So you've got to try and find a happy medium where you maintain your authenticity of queer culture for the queer audience, but also you make yourself accessible for the heterosexual audience, because it's now gay bars aren't just for gay people.
Absolutely. There's a bit of a stigma around straight people being in queer venues.
And the hen party stigmas.
The hen party stigmas. And although some of them can be true, because we've had one too many experiences, haven't we, drag with people that have come in being like, oh my God, you're a drag queen.
I can touch you. I
want you to do something for me. I love drag queens. I've seen RuPaul's Drag Race season 2. You know, I think what we should talk about is actually the right and the wrong ways to interact with queer people in queer venues.
Absolutely.
So I'll let you take the boat on this one, Dragalicious.
Okay. So, yeah, most of the, not attacking, but the more problematic meetings I've had with heterosexual people in queer spaces, people expect it to be from, like, butch rugby-playing lads. No. The majority of people like that come in are up for a laugh, up for banter, living the best life, loving times. It is, more than not, the group of heterosexual early 20s, mid-20s females, either on hen parties or out on a girls' night out, that see a drag queen and think, oh my God, run at you screaming, grab you. I've had my wig torn from my head, and Dolls knows what I'm like with my wigs.
Oh, God.
Literally torn from my head by an overexcited girl. We'll call her Sheila. An overexcited girl called Sheila.
No, we'll call her a Karen.
Karen. Oh no, Karen was a mother. Karen was sat there taking notes in her Burberry notebook.
Oh, she was complaining to our manager, telling us that it's disgusting how we act. And the manager's saying, I have no control over them. They don't get paid by me.
But the menaces, and they're like, how do you do your makeup? And, you know, if you want me to tell you, I will tell you, darling. You don't ask, how have you done your makeup, and then proceed to touch your makeup. No, darling. I'm a massive, big, fat, old man. You touch my makeup, it's going to fly off my face. Leave it alone. They touch your wigs, they grab your outfit. Where'd you get this from? Ragging it to pieces. If you're in the middle of singing a song, it's not the best time for someone to be jumping on stage and saying, can I have a photo? Wait until I finish this high note, sweetheart, then we can have a talk about it. There's a time and a place. Literally trying to drag you into the toilets with them so you can have a key. I'm all right, love, I don't need to go to the toilet. They just can be absolute menaces. And I'm not saying this is all the groups of girls that go out, and not at all. Some are absolute sweethearts and they're lovely. But some are menaces.
And this is it. I think what we need to remember is that also it doesn't just happen to queens. You know, straight people come into our queer event spaces and they say to lesbians, well, you don't look like a lesbian.
Oh, girl, preach, yeah.
Oh, you must be a lesbian. You look butch. They say to gay guys, have you ever done drag? I love drag queens. I think you'd look amazing as a woman. They use terms that are offensive to trans people. And it's not because they are trying to be offensive. It's just because there's a lack of knowledge there.
And the amount of times someone's come up to you and said, you can't be a drag queen because you look like a girl.
Yes, I get that. I get that every day. I even get that online. You know, and what we need to remember is just that there is a way to conduct yourself and not conduct yourself, because, as I said before, you are an ally and you're invited into our house as a guest.
Yes.
And so we just ask for a little bit of respect, and in turn, we'll respect you. And not only that, you will have the best time of your life, because gay people know how to party. Whilst we're talking about conducting yourself and ways to behave in venues. Now, for the people who don't know, Dragalicious is mother to all. Dragalicious runs around Bradford, and she, even on the microphone, she says, you know, mother loves to party. The embodiment of all-encompassing motherhood. It doesn't matter who you are, what you're going through. She'll talk to you. She'll help you through your issues. She'll nurture you on her bosom.
It's ample.
Oh, always. Those bags of rice, girl. Those bags of rice. Dragalicious is a nurturing mother to all in Bradford. And if you know Bradford, you know that it is a diverse venue. So, Dragalicious, you have many of your children, all from different walks of life. You've got from many races, many sexualities, many gender identities. So what do you say about the diversity in our community?
Back in the day, I keep saying that, but back when I was younger, there didn't seem to be as much of a diverse gay culture. The majority of gay bars I worked in were full of predominantly white, young to middle-aged gay men. You didn't see as many lesbians, you didn't see as many gay people of colour. It was, thankfully, it's so good now that they feel more comfortable and able to come out and join into the queer spaces. But for a long time, when I was younger and working in Huddersfield, we used to have separate gay and lesbian clubs. Like, we used to have a lesbian bar called Lily's, a gay bar called Chad's. And literally, if a lesbian went into Chad's, they weren't like vilified, but they used to get a good few people looking at them like, why are they here? What are they doing here? It was horrific. Thankfully now, any ethnicity, any sexuality within the queer spectrum, etc., feel more comfortable being in any queer generalised space.
Absolutely. That's a point that I touched upon in the last podcast, is that I said, you know, we have a lot of diversity in our groups right now amongst our numbers. However, there's still a long way to go.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, for anybody who's not been living under a rock, a few years ago we had a fiasco where they added a black and brown stripe to the LGBTQ flag, and people lost their minds. And if you get upset about a flag, then does that not mean that you are also part of the problem?
I'm telling you, if you're getting upset about a flag, you need to have a long eye look at your life and check your head. If you're upset about a bit of fabric with a couple of extra colours stitched on it, darling, please.
Absolutely, absolutely. You need to check your head.
Wreck it.
Smash it against the wall. We've got a long, long way to go. And thankfully we are moving forward as a society. The fight's not over, baby girls.
It's not. This is why that when some straight people, like, I'm not generalising, some straight people say, well, why can't I have a straight pride? Darling, when you still have to undergo the struggles that a lot of queer people do in day-to-day life, when you need a place where you can just be yourself, you don't have to be scared to go into a venue. Say if you went into a Wetherspoons, there's a lot of gay people I know that wouldn't feel comfortable kissing their partner in the Wetherspoons because they don't feel safe there. Straight people, you'd feel safe kissing anyway because that is seen as the norm. We are still seen as different. So therefore, while we are still seen as different, that's why we have a queer pride and you don't have a straight pride.
This is it, something that we just need to sort of remember, needs highlighting, is that we are not comfortable walking down the street and holding hands, showing public displays of affection. I mean, Dragalicious knows that any form of public affection physically makes me want to crawl inside my own skeleton. No. However, I think part of that problem is that we've been socially conditioned into thinking
Absolutely agree.
We've been socially conditioned into thinking that it's okay, but not in my face. And this is it, that we can't operate in society the same way that other people can.
No.
So people need to remember that we've still got a big celebration to go. And for those who don't know, Pride is a celebration. It was created when we had the Stonewall riots. We were outraged at police beatings, I do believe. And they were fronted by a very famous trans woman called Marsha P. Johnson. Now, this was so famous. She was famous in all of the clubs. She was painted and had a picture taken by Andy Warhol.
She was the flag bearer, wasn't she? She was the flag bearer.
She was the flag bearer, yeah. She was the face of the community, just as how drag queens today are the faces of our community. We obviously use the whole saying where she threw the first brick, but this woman was that camp. It wasn't a brick, it was a shot glass. She threw the first shot glass and, you know, it sparked Pride as a celebration, which is a freedom of expression. And this is why we still need prides today, because we still get people marching outside of our events, boycotting gay people, boycotting trans people. And now it's got to the point where it's developed into gay people even boycotting trans people.
Oh, I know. The amount of in-group hatred is obscene.
Absolutely. I mean, do you remember last Bradford Pride when there was that giant
I do remember. I was on stage and I remember blowing him a kiss. I was like, yeah, sweethearts.
Take this one. I was there looking like an absolute piece of woman. This is what Pride is. It's a freedom of expression. It's not about partying. It's not about walking around half naked. It's about expressing yourself. And if you want to express yourself by being half naked, then by all means, go ahead. But to link it back to Keighley Pride, I think something that's amazing about this is that it's not about giving into commercialisation. It's run entirely by queer people and allies. It's for queer people and allies. It's giving the voices to queer people and allies. And
I think it's fabulous for somewhere like Keighley to have that. Like, say, because Keighley and Huddersfield are very, very similar places. It's the kind of place where difference isn't always accepted or celebrated. People are very used to a certain way of life and they will stick to that. If you are different, you are wrong. And that's why I think Keighley Pride is such an amazing, amazing event and idea, because like Huddersfield, they need that. They need that because people need to feel safe and accepted. Even if it's only for one day a year that boosts them, they can carry that message with them then through the day-to-day life.
And so I think it's phenomenal that I get to call somebody who is well-versed in the matters of diversity, inclusivity and love as you are, Dragalicious.
Thank you, babes.
To conclude this whole shenanigan, Dragalicious, where can the people find you?
Well, now it's the new normal. Sadly, not in as many places as usual, but when it's lifted, will be more places. But at the moment, you can catch me on a Friday and Saturday night at the Fleece in Skipton, North Yorkshire, where sadly, we're still not allowed DJs or entertainment, but I work the doors, I go among the tables, we have a bit of chit-chat and banter, so I can still entertain you. You can also find online on Facebook on Monday nights, myself, Dragalicious, the gorgeous Doll's Nest and King. We are the Triple Ds and we go live from the Quarantine Queens every Monday night at 8 p.m. for our Room 101 show.
And for everybody who doesn't know what Room 101 is, it's a game show where we argue to get things put into room 101. And these are things that we don't like and things that we want erasing from history altogether. And if we lose our arguments, we have to spin the wheel of misfortune. And misfortune is a kind word for it, because there are some atrocious challenges.
So if you want to see a queen go from glamour to then tune in on Monday night.
I love that. What are your socials, Dragalicious? Promotion.
You can find me on Facebook under my birth name, which is Scott Hallis, or my fan page, which is just Dragalicious. Dragalicious.
Oh, it rolls right off the tongue.
I've been told. I'm also on Instagram. Dolls had to tell me what my Instagram name was a few weeks ago because I couldn't remember. It's been that long. Instagram, my name is Dragalicious Live. I don't do Twitter.
I mean, she is best not, because she would be lobbing her phone across the room.
Preach.
I am Dolls Nest, and you can find me on Instagram at dolls_nest. I'm about on Facebook and Twitter and all those things, but it's all just the same name. All just the same name everywhere. Very simple.
Because she's the one and only girl.
I'm the one and only. Next up, we have a very stunning little sing-song from our Dragalicious, and she has the voice of an angel and a face like a pit bull.
I hate you so much.
Oh, I bloody love you. And remember, you can also find Keighley Pride, who have commissioned this podcast, on Facebook at Keighley Pride, and stay tuned throughout the week because they will be delivering some kooky, fun little shows. They'll also be giving out some sexy little numbers and quite a few videos. So there's a lot coming up. Give them a follow, put that notification bell on, and give everybody a little bit of a cheeky love. So if you stay tuned throughout this entire thing, thank you so much. And you'll be joined with us next time with a very special podcast. But until then, I've been Dolls Nest.
I've been Dragalicious.
Thank you and good day.
Do you think that you are? Please tell me who. You ain't no superstar, but you've got to swing and shake it, then you move and make it. Who do you think you are? Then you trust to use it, prove it and you prove it. Show me how good you are, my love. Now you have got to reach on up, never lose control. Now you have got to reach on up, never lose your soul. Tell me right now. Oh, yeah. Tell me right now. Ooh. Tell me right now. Who do you think you are?
Cheers, thank you.